Hey, so today I have a very interesting and very phallic entry in my testing notes series. I'm doing cucumbers. I figured why not go ahead and do something niche, really try to drive that viewership up. Turns out I have 5.5 cucumber flavors, so this is going to be pretty exhaustive. So today I'll be covering cucumbers from TPA, Capella, Flavor Art, Flavora, Real Flavors Super Concentrates, and as a bonus, we'll throw in Flavor West Cucumber Mint. So in terms of how I use cucumber, it's kind of a niche flavor. Generally, it's going to be used as an accent in mixes, and you can use it one of two major ways. The first way is using it as sort of a juicy background in mixes, in places where stuff like Inora cactus is going to be too sweet or doesn't quite fill in. The other way is using it as sort of a bright, crisp green accent. So some of your classic pairings for cucumber are going to be melon, mint, and citrus. And it's been done a million times, but it's been done a million times for a reason. It tends to go really well with melon flavors, especially like cantaloupe works the best probably out of the melons, and unless you have some special use cases, which I'll get into. But for mint, you want to aim like more towards a realistic spearmint, and then for citrus you can kind of go nuts. It works a little bit better with like lemons and limes than oranges, but if you get the right kind of orange or tangerine flavor, it can work there too. You also see it in pairings with sort of more herbal flavors. You can go for some of like your basils, or your, again, cactus works really well with it. But it's like a nice green flavor to play those sort of more niche herbal flavors off of. You can also see it in cocktails quite a bit too. In general, you want to stick with sort of clearer liquor. It goes really well with sort of the juniper notes and gin. You can also sort of work it into a lot of mojito recipes too. In general, those work really well with cucumber. So a couple things to watch out for with it. I do feel like cucumber and sweetness is kind of an issue depending on which cucumber you're using. Occasionally, sort of the greener, crisp flavors in cucumbers don't go particularly well with a lot of sweetening. In general, cucumber plus sucralose is kind of a no for me, but even like sweeter base flavors in cucumber, sometimes I have some issue with. The other thing you kind of have to watch out for, so cucumber either works with something or it doesn't. Generally, you'll be able to tell really quickly. So watch out for that sort of like clashing cucumber flavor. Not a lot of people like a really distinct, clear cucumber flavor. It kind of needs to work with the stuff that's around it. So I did come up with a super thought out, not haphazard at all rubric for grading these cucumber flavors that you can see there. For realism, I want to see how much it actually tastes like a real cucumber and what kind of cucumber we're talking about. Texture with cucumbers is super important because we're talking about like how crisp of a green flavor it is, as well as like if there's any juiciness to it. Sweetness, again, this is probably a bigger issue for me than some other people, but in general, you kind of want to be able to ballpark exactly how sweet that cucumber is and what you have to work around with it. Off flavors, pretty self-explanatory. What tastes weird here or like it doesn't belong. Strength, sort of talking about how high to use it and whether it works better as an accent or a primary flavor. And then for use case, obviously, when you would use this over other cucumber flavors. Right out of the gates, we're going to go for TPA's Cucumber. Starting right out, this is a weird flavor. And not weird in a bad way because I think it's ultimately pretty pleasant, but weird in that it doesn't remind me a whole lot of cucumber. To me, it tastes a lot like the rind on a watermelon, which is interesting. But it definitely has that kind of like white part of a watermelon rind going on. Like you can tell that there's something that's supposed to be green, but it doesn't quite have that like cucumber bite to it. It doesn't really taste like a vegetable at all. It also has a really interesting texture to it. Kind of reminds me of Capella hibiscus in that it has like a kind of sticky, high fructose corn syrup kind of mouthfeel. Like it tastes a lot like a popsicle, or even more accurately with that kind of greener note, that white watermelon rind note. It almost gets like a hint of woodiness to it, and it tastes like a popsicle stick that's kind of been soaking in melted popsicle. It's really interesting. I'm not going to say it's bad because it's definitely not bad, but it's an interesting flavor, and I don't get much that really feels like a discrete cucumber here. It also feels way too sweet to just be a cucumber flavor. The sweetness kind of goes with that high fructose corn syrup mouthfeel. It really just reminds me of kind of like a watermelon popsicle more than anything else. So in terms of strength, I feel like this works a little bit better as an accent flavor. It's weird and it's not offensive, but it's a little odd to try to build an entire juice around. I'd use it as an accent more around like 1.5 to 2%. And then in terms of the pairings, I really wouldn't use this one as a cucumber. I think there's other better cucumbery options coming along, but I think it's a really interesting flavor. I think it would play really well with like your classic Adirondack placid kind of flavors. You know, you're talking about like pear and honeysuckle. It actually reminds me quite a bit of TPA's honeysuckle, actually. It's more of a sort of green, sweet floral rather than like a crispy vegetable cucumber kind of flavor. I think you can do some really interesting things with this. I just wouldn't necessarily try to use it as a cucumber. Moving right along, I have Flavor Arts Cucumber. Yeah, that's definitely a cucumber, as opposed to like the TPA before it. This tastes distinctly like a cucumber. It's a very realistic, peel-heavy kind of cucumber. And I think it's peel-heavy to the point where the body itself is a little bit dry. It doesn't really have like the juiciness that I'd expect from the inside of a cucumber. My other favorite thing about this, it's not overly sweet. I think it's maybe just a touch sweeter than like an actual cucumber, but I think it portrays a really accurate cucumber skin or peel or rind or whatever the actual technical term is flavor. So in terms of off flavors, you have to really like cucumber peel for this one. It's definitely peel heavy, and that might count as an off flavor to some people. I do feel like it's a very strong flavor, and so I'd probably be using it definitely as an accent around 0.25 to 0.5%. You don't want to go too much higher than that. You get plenty of cucumber skin there. I feel like once you do sort of crank it up above those accent percentages, it tends to get a little bit waxy and dry and peppery, and not entirely pleasant. I would definitely keep it in those accent percentages. And so the use for that would sort of bear that out. You want it as a very realistic cucumber accent, almost like a cucumber twist in like a cocktail or something like that. It is a cucumber to use for when you are not fucking around, basically, more than anything else. It's a good cucumber to use when you're going to be using a really heavy hand with cooling and you want really intense mint. This is going to be one of the cucumbers that can stand up to it at a moderate percentage without really getting blown out by all that mint. You'll still get a distinct cucumber. It's good for using in sort of the more herbal or dry or less sweet versions of some of those cucumber mixes. I can see it pairing well with like gin and cocktails and anything with like that kind of heavy juniper note. It should go ahead and show up pretty well. But yeah, in general, it's a cucumber to use when you're not messing around and you actually want a pretty strong cucumber peel note in something. So next I have Flavors Cucumber. This one's interesting. It reminds me more than anything else of like quick pickles. You know, when you go ahead and you only have like 15 minutes or whatever, and you go ahead and you like actually slice up some cucumber and put it in some with some sugar and some vinegar to kind of get that like light, crisp pickle instead of like a heavier pickle. It's a really interesting cucumber flavor. In terms of realism, I mean, I can taste the cucumber here. I can definitely taste a cucumber rind. It's not overpowering. It's pretty well balanced. You do get some of that fleshier cucumber body to it, but the texture's odd. It's a little soft. It's manages to not quite be crisp and not quite be juicy. Instead, it just feels a little bit mushy. Again, sort of like a quick pickle on something. Sweetness for me is where this kind of falls down a little bit, like I've been ranting about or whatever. I don't like a particularly sweet pickle, and I do feel like this has a lot of sweetness in it for a pickle flavor, especially one with that kind of pronounced green note to it. And the off flavors here are really interesting. So beyond, you know, that extra sweetness, I do kind of get a salty note out of this too, which I don't think is going to be portable to anything else. Because this definitely tastes like a cucumber, but it does have a little bit of like saltiness to it and savoriness to it. In terms of strength, I'd say this is fairly strong. Maybe not as strong and clear as like Flavor Art's version, but it's definitely sort of in the same ballpark. Probably used about 0.5 to 0.75% as an accent percentage. If you did want to go higher and do something really weird with this juice, I think you could get a primary note from about 1.5 to 2%. And in terms of the use case, this is going to be kind of subjective because this isn't necessarily my favorite cucumber. I think it would be an interesting cucumber for sort of beverage vapes, something where you're already not really relying on that crisper texture. That salty note, it's going to get interesting with sort of brighter fruit, so I might stay away from that. But if you have something herbal or like a tea or something like that, that has that kind of herbal floral edge to it, but isn't necessarily overpowering, I think this could be a good cucumber to work with that. So next I have Capella's Cucumber. This is actually a really useful cucumber overall. It's the juiciest version of cucumber that I've found so far, and in terms of realism, it actually does pretty well. I'd say it tastes a little bit more like a cucumber juice than like a whole cucumber peel. You do get some of those greener peel notes, but it is sort of more balanced towards that juicier cucumber. Again, I find this a little bit on the oversweet side. I'm sure I'll just be ranting about that to pretty much nobody. But it does seem to me to be a little bit too sweet for like a cucumber juice. It feels sweetened. But that's pretty much my only off flavor with it. I do feel like if you start to really go up to sort of primary note flavors, it kind of picks up more of like a green vegetable as opposed to just like a crispy cucumber kind of thing. I start to taste like snap peas or like broccoli or something if I end up going up above an accent percentage with it. Strength, I do feel like it is not particularly concentrated, but that's kind of par for the course with Capella. I definitely stick in the accent range with this one to sort of add that juiciness to mixes. Probably around 2 to 3% for me, but you can go a little bit lower. I wouldn't go much higher. And in terms of use case, really, I would just use this for a juicy cucumber back note when you just want some additional sort of moisture to a recipe without absolutely dominating the flavor. Basically, if you can taste this clearly, I feel like you've gone sort of off the deep end with it. But it's good at low percentages, fairly unobtrusive. You can go ahead and start to move into mixing it with some brighter flavors without absolutely dominating it with cucumber. But overall, I think if you were probably going to pick up one cucumber, this is the one I suggest. Not just because the most people use it, but also it does a lot of what you probably want cucumber to do in a mix. So next I have Real Flavors Super Concentrate Cucumber. I feel like I need to preface this by saying that I know there are a lot of Real Flavors Super Concentrate fans out there. The line doesn't really click for me for a lot of reasons, but there's kind of a reason I don't review a lot of it. What I do get out of this is I get kind of a darker, earthy cucumber, you know, where a lot of these cucumber flavors are trying to be like a brighter English cucumber where you'd actually eat the peel. To me, this tastes a lot like, you know, your normal grocery store, or sort of even better like a garden cucumber that has a little bit more earthiness to it. It's a little bit of a darker flavor. Now, my primary problem with Real Flavors Super Concentrates in general is that they don't have much in the way of texture. They're all very thin to me. In general, a lot of them that I've tried have tasted phenomenal, but they just don't really vape all that well. That's less of an issue with, I guess, the fruits and with the cucumber especially. I think if you were going to go ahead and have one flavor to be kind of thin, cucumber isn't a bad one to choose. But I do feel like it doesn't have much of a base or even like a top note to it. It's just kind of like a thin, dark cucumber mid note. One of the things I do like about this is, for me at least, it nails the sweetness of cucumber. It isn't a sweet flavor. It doesn't taste like somebody dumped some sugar on your cucumber, which is nice. For the off flavors, I do feel like that darkness maybe isn't what people are looking for in a cucumber flavor. It goes a little bit vegetal to me, and it definitely has like kind of an earthy edge to it. In terms of strength, it's not, for like a dark sort of earthy flavor, it's not as powerful as you'd expect. I'd definitely be around 1.5%, 2%, even in the accent range. I wouldn't try really using it outside of an accent. I don't necessarily think it's going to be anything you want to use as sort of the main flavor in a juice. In terms of use case, You know, if you want a darker cucumber and you don't have that same weird issue that I have with all the real flavor super concentrates flavors, it's probably worth it. I don't know. As it stands for me being a little bit thinner, I'd kind of save it for those sort of really dark herbal mixes. Um, I feel like it's sort of a niche flavor even for niche flavors. And last, I have Flavorless Cucumber Mint. So this is only half of a cucumber flavor, but honestly, a lot of what you're going to be doing with cucumbers mixing with mint. So I figured, why not? This is definitely my pleasant surprise out of this batch of testing. This is a really solid flavor. Flavor West surprises you sometimes. Like their martini flavor, excellent dry vermouth flavor. No idea why Flavor West makes an excellent dry vermouth flavor, but there we are. This manages to taste like a fairly realistic take on spearmint and cucumber. Both that spearmint and that cucumber are both fairly realistic. They're fairly nuanced. They don't absolutely kill it with sweetness, which is nice. It doesn't taste like Wrigley's gum with some cucumber in the background. It tastes like a real ass cucumber and some real ass spearmint. It might be a little bit sweetened, like sort of a beverage sweetened, almost like a drier mojito kind of sweetened, but it's nice. In terms of off flavors, I don't really pick up any, and I can find a reason to complain about anything, so that's impressive. But yeah, it says cucumber mint, tastes like cucumber and mint. It's a pretty good take on it. In terms of strength, I do feel like this is going to work a little bit better as a primary flavor. This isn't nearly as interesting at a lower percentage. At a lower percentage, it just kind of tastes like a muddy mint flavor. You kind of have to add up to about 4% to really get the separation between the cucumber and the mint and sort of appreciate everything that's going on here. In terms of the use case, I wouldn't overthink this one. Again, there's a lot of mint pairing with cucumber. This is an excellent option for that. It's already pre-balanced, and the mint and the cucumber here are both really solid. I think it'll work well on like kind of those mojito beverage mixes, although honestly, you put this in some gin, I wouldn't be mad at that either. I think it'd work well with the melon, like fruit pairing side of things too. And honestly, I'm not mad at this as a solo flavor at 4%. I think it's actually really well balanced, really well put together. In terms of our conclusions, the cheat sheet, if you will. Like I said, if you're going to buy one cucumber, buy Cap Cucumber. I think it does a lot of what you want a cucumber flavor to do if you're not like super into green herbal flavors. Has a nice juiciness to it. You can use it as the background in a lot of mixes. I think Flavor Art Cucumber is also really good, but it definitely tastes like a cucumber for better or worse. This is the one that I would use if you really want something to taste like cucumber. I was really surprised by TPA's Cucumber. I don't think this is a bad flavor at all, but it tastes like watermelon rind to me. I think you're going to have more fun with it, sort of thinking outside the box and adding it into like watermelon flavors, kind of messing with that sort of placid honeysuckle route. It's really interesting, but I wouldn't use it as a cucumber. Flavora, not really my thing in this case. It's a little too sweet for me. That saltiness is a little bit weird. I think if you do have like some sort of really niche savory application for it, I think this would be a good cucumber to use. And then the Real Flavor Super Concentrate Cucumber. Again, it's probably just my bias with Real Flavor Super Concentrates. They don't really work for me, and this kind of bears it out. It works better than the bakeries, but once you get past, some of the texture issues, it's a really dark, herbal, earthy cucumber, and so you'd be locked into some really specialized mixes, like maybe using like F.A. Zen Garden or something that already has that sort of dry herbal note to it. I'd probably skip it. Flavor West Cucumber Mint, though. I mean, if you're into cucumbers and if you're into mint, go ahead and pick that up because it's really good as a solo flavor. It's also good if you don't want to overthink it and you just want a simple recipe where you add some of this to like a melon, or you add some of this into like a mojito mix with some red berries or something like that. It's a really nice, surprisingly competent flavor from Flavor West. So yeah, I hope that helped. That was a lot of talk about cucumbers. But thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. I will catch you later.